Welcome to Discover Indie Film. I'm Jeff Howard, and this is actually going to be, I always say this, but this is going to be a really fun podcast for me because I have Gavin Gaitan with me. Hey, Gavin.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Hey, thanks for being here. So Gavin's on Zoom, so the usual Zoom warning is that we're not going to talk over each other. We're going to be very respectful, but there's like a micro delay in Zoom, and you don't talk over each other, and then you listen back, and sometimes that micro delay screws with our speech. But I'm promising you, I'm not going to interrupt Gavin once, because I want to hear everything he has to say.
All right.
And besides that, if you hate the audio quality, don't blame us, because, we're using Zoom. So with that said, Gavin is on this podcast, and we're actually recording this towards the end of January 2025 because Gavin's film Downtown, well, it played at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival last December, and now I'm just going to lead off with it took home Best in Fest for feature film. That alone, but I'm not going to stop because you also took home the Grand Jury Award for Best Feature Film Comedy, the Grand Jury Award for Best Director of a Feature Film, and that was you directed it, and the Grand Jury Award for Best Screenplay for a Feature Film. Once again, just your name, you wrote it. So that's not a bad haul.
Yeah, no, that's an enormous honor because, having gone to the festival and saw the films that I was stacked up against was, it was really tough competition. And I respect a lot of the filmmakers that were working in the different types of genres that they were working in. And I'm very proud, not only to have played at that festival, but to have won those awards. So thank you.
I appreciate what you said because, there were so many really good features this year at Sherman Oaks Film Festival. But, Downtown is just fucking great.
Thank you.
I would have to have a different podcast where I sit down with the person and you have to sit on the couch with me in my TV room and we just record us watching it together and doing what do you call that? Like a Criterion Collection kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because Downtown is great throughout. It's just every aspect of the filmmaking because it's not just a great script. It's not just well directed. It's not just well acted. By the way, it's funny. I have this terrible habit on the podcast of pointing things out about our awards juries. And the film that won Best Performance by a Cast absolutely deserved it. It was Marco Polo, a beautiful film from Spain, tragic story about a kid dealing with drug addiction and his older brother dies in a tragic accident. So your classic, but it is your classic, the drama gets the acting awards thing.
Sure.
And I just want to put in a note. If you ever talk to anyone in your cast, you can let them know that this festival director was like, your cast did an amazing job. They really did.
They really, really did.
They really did. And it's a very challenging thing that the film is really funny and really smart throughout. And every performance sort of carries that on, and they're not playing it to be funny, right? They're playing it straight as their characters would be. Mm-hmm. And I always think that's the kind of performance that doesn't get awards because it's funny.
Yeah.
But I bet it's harder than being sad about your brother dying.
It can be, depending on, a person's natural comedic chops. I would say for someone like Donovan, it is, I don't want to speak for him because he worked extremely hard and, he put a lot into that role of Timo. But, he's natural. He's funny on camera and he's funny off camera. And so for him, it's just breathing. For some other people, I don't know. I was lucky to work with people who all had a pretty good sense of humor. Anybody who read that script and agreed to be a part of the project had to have a pretty good sense of humor. So it meant that comedy came pretty easy for them. But yeah, sometimes it could be the most difficult thing about it would have been finding the line between being too absurd and ridiculous and playing it maybe a bit too serious. And I think every time we did something, it started out more serious and grounded, and then would just lean more and more towards the absurd. And once we got to that point, it was like, okay, we're done. Let's move on, because this is just devolving into absurdity. But and then other times, it would start very serious, and we'd have to get progressively loosen it up. Whatever I guess felt right. Although comedy can be extremely deceiving. What is really making you laugh on the day and feels really good, you could in post, it's just nonsense. It just means nothing, or you just completely derail your scene because you were just going, oh, this is hilarious on set, and then in post you look at it, you're like, oh man, this scene wasn't supposed to be funny at all, or shouldn't have been. So yeah, it was. I would say that was the biggest challenge for the actors, was towing that line.
Sure. And I'll add that as the director, it sounds like you did the perfect thing, which was you made sure you got a lot of different vibes and feelings on set, right? It sounds like if your takes were on the serious side, then you encouraged, leaning towards the funny. If it started too funny, but so once you ended up in the editing room, you had a lot of freedom, I assume.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there was times where, like overall, maybe we shot a scene too serious, or overall we shot a scene too funny when it should have been serious, and so that was a little tricky to work with. But with the magic of editing, you can change things. But yeah, we would definitely have varying degrees of absurdity, where if there was a take of an obvious joke, I could definitely ask my editor, can you show me the ones where he like went to 10? And there was always ones like that, to get which was something I figured out on set, which was great with my actors, having them be extremely versatile, where I could say, all right, I want you to be way more subtle with this, or I need you to like go into hysterics with the comedy, and they could give me both, which was great.
Fantastic. Well, I've already I broke my rule, which was I normally try to save like diving into the film till after we learn more about you and the filmmaker. One of the reasons why I started this podcast was I really wanted the filmmakers to really have a chance to share what got them where they're at. Because I'll try to say it only once this podcast, which is, I run 2 film festivals and see the joke is I don't watch 1,600 films a year, but I start 1,600 films a year.
Yeah, of course. Right.
But I do watch a lot. I watch, especially the shorts, obviously you let them finish, but you don't, once you know, but, so I'm in sort of a different position where I see a film like Downtown, and that is just well made and entertaining and just high quality from start to finish. And I don't know, I just become like a cheerleader. I pull out the pom-poms and I start jumping up and down and I don't even know what to say. I am rambling. So I will drop Downtown for a moment and dive in on you, which is, I am very curious because it's such a well-made film. And by that, I mean picture, sound, editing, performance, obviously at the script level, but there's obviously at Sherman Oaks Film Festival and the other festival, Film Invasion LA, there's great films and you're like, hey, if they'd had more money, I know it would have looked better, but we still show them because they're super high quality. Downtown has no Achilles heel as far as from where I'm sitting. You know what I mean? Like every aspect.
Thanks. Well, I spent a lot of money to make sure that was the case.
Excellent, right?
And you kind of have to.
That is true. It's really almost impossible. All right, so here it is. Here's the question that'll get us into the you part, the Gavin part. So how did you get involved in film? Were you a creative kid? Did you discover film first? Did you discover some other creative outlet first?
Um, so I did not start with like a camera in my hands. I guess I just started as a film lover. And I would my parents were great in indoctrinating me with really high quality films from a young age. Lots of things that they watched, and it quickly became my favorite medium to consume. And then I kind of found film on my own. You know, I got an iPad when I was maybe 12 or so, and I had an app called Crackle, which and I watched a movie every day, two, three movies a day for years, and just became obsessed and I started having this kind of dialogue in my mind about of critiquing them. And I thought, you know, maybe I would be a film critic, but I would watch them in a lot of bad movies because it was, you know, just a platform with a bunch of B kung fu movies and sci-fi channel movies and stuff. And uh, I would just watch them and think, well, this is how I would have done this differently. Why did that stink? You know, and you know what could have been better. I liked acting as a kid, but it wasn't something that I moved as a forward as I got older. But I had a lot of respect for the director of like my school plays. I mean, she was like a drill sergeant, but she had a very singular goal and vision, and she executed on it. And I really respected that, and I kind of liked the maestro quality that she had. But and I, you know, by the time I think I was maybe 15, 14 or so, I knew that I wanted to be making movies, but I honestly didn't have the confidence to even admit to myself that I wanted to be a director. I thought that was probably too far-fetched. I think for a while I said I wanted to be a cinematographer, which once I figured out how smart you have to be a cinematographer, I realized I couldn't do that. I actually got a camera in my hands maybe when I was like 15 or 16 and realized like I can't. This is science and I don't know anything. I'm not that smart. But I really didn't. I think I made some music videos in high school for school and stuff, but I really had no confidence as a filmmaker at all. Just a dream, and I never wrote anything. Or um, later on in high school, I decided, okay, I do want to be a director. I do want to be in film, but I had no didn't have the confidence to really start with an idea or writing or asking people for help. Um, and then I went to Cal State Long Beach and went into their film program when I was 20. So my last 2 years of college, and that's when the first time somebody told me, "Well, you have to do something now. You gotta make something. You gotta make a short." Um, and then when I did it, I mean, I was completely hooked. I was absolutely uh, addicted to it, and just started creating like nobody's business. I mean, I for the 2 years, I mean, I think I made like 14 pieces, music videos, commercials, short films, abstract pieces, literally anything. You know, when they would give me equipment for a weekend, and not this is not very, it was a public school, did not have any real equipment, but when I would get anything for a weekend, I would shoot two things simultaneously so I could have two, you know, just that opportunity. I wanted to really utilize it. So I'd shoot a short and I'd shoot a music video just so I had the experience of both. Um, and it like, I mean, it just became like a total obsession. And never looked back. Now I have no shame about asking people for help, and you know, my confidence is really grew my confidence during that time, and my confidence in this specifically the type of filmmaker that I think that I am. Although I'm not 100, still not 100% sure exactly what I'm, you know, what type of movies I should be making. I mean, I could really go in any direction. I'm still kind of trying to figure that out, but I know the type of filmmaking that I like to do, which is all out on the street, ensemble casts, usually on the lighter, funnier side. Um, but then I graduated from film school in 2019 and decided that I wanted to make features. I heard in college, I heard my DP had worked with a guy who shot a feature, and that like just blew my mind. I was like, how is that even physically possible? Because I was making a short film that took me 3 days, and it was the most insane endeavor, and it just destroyed me every single time I did it. Although I loved it a lot, it was like, it was like moving heaven and earth. And then, to hear that he did that times 10 was like insane to me. And that was introduced the concept of shooting on weekends, the fact that they shot Saturdays and Sundays for like 7, 8 consecutive weekends or something like that. So I was really stunned. And then when I graduated, I decided I tried to get into the industry and I couldn't get any work. And the only reason I wanted to get in the industry at all was to, move up the proverbial ladder or whatever, which I mean really doesn't exist, but I thought it did at that time. Um, and I thought, well, I mean, I guess I'll just do it myself then. And so I made my first feature, which I really didn't know how to make at all. And then when I was in post on that one, I decided that I wanted to make features, and I decided I needed to make three specifically. Not, I knew one was going to be it was going to be bad, which it kind of was, and then, but it was mostly just an experiment, just like an endurance test. Like, just can I, what is it like doing that? Planning that many resources, hiring that many people, shooting for that amount of time. And then the second one was like an actual narrative story. The first one was just like literally just a collection of vignettes. And then the second one was like a actual singular narrative, main character. Like, okay, how do I tell a story with overarching themes and a consistent tone and stuff like that. And then the third one was just, I want to go as big as I possibly can go, figure out what I was good at and what I really liked doing. And then I tried to implement it all on the third one while going as big as I could possibly go by myself, as like a self-producing, you know, no financial help, no, I mean, we didn't have an AD, like, like a lot more money than micro, but a micro mindset, if you will. And then that's where I am today.
For sure. All right. So I have like a million questions now, but also I'll
Great.
go back earlier. So were you Southland the whole time? Like before Cal State Long Beach?
Oh yeah. I'm from Santa Barbara originally.
Oh, from Santa Barbara. Excellent.
Yeah.
I went to college up there. All right. So so Santa Barbara, and then I have to admit, I'm really fascinated by so many things in your story, but one of them was that you fell in love with film as an audience member.
Mhm.
And then clearly, like when you got the drive to make films, although you weren't sure how to go about it,
Mhm.
you clearly like had a vision, right? Like did you have films in your mind and you were just thinking to yourself, how do I get these from inside my head out onto a screen? Was that
Yeah.
sort of what drove you?
Yeah. I had been playing around with, I've been visualizing film in my mind since I was very young, but um, I never wanted to ask anybody for help ever. I was so, well, so it was a combination of that, and it was also just a deep fear of failing as well. I knew that it would be incredibly difficult for me to like realize any kind of dream, to take it from my brain onto, onto a screen or whatever. And um, I was so intimidated by the idea of it just falling short, um, and and I was also really afraid of asking people for help because I didn't really know anybody who was in film. I knew people who were in film, but they were maybe a little bit farther ahead of me, and so I felt like I couldn't ask them for help. Then also all my other friends, they didn't really have like an interest in that, and so I felt like I'd be putting them out by asking them. And it wasn't until I got to film school that I found, okay, well, everybody here wants to do this specifically, and so you're not putting anybody out by asking them for help. I mean, you were putting them out once they started working with me and on the conditions that I put people under. Not that I'm like mean to people, but I mean, we go out and we shoot on the street. We shoot on location every day, all day. I mean, it's very strenuous. I very quickly realized there were some people that did not want to work with in the environments that I wanted to work in, which was fine because I also found a lot of people that did like it and thought it was really exciting and thought it was fun and it was what they were looking for. But yeah, it was uh, a fear of asking anybody for help and a fear of you really letting myself down and like the immense bar of quality that I think I had set because I just spent a decade watching incredible films. I mean, I remember watching Taxi Driver and just being depressed after and thinking, well, I'll never ever make anything that good. So, but then I realized when I got older, well, I mean, that's because I'm not going to make a movie like that. That's not the kind of movies that I would make. I want to make comedies. I want to make something, they already made that movie. I'm not going to try to do a remake of Taxi Driver, and also there's no reason to try to compete with it. Um, but then when I actually started making stuff in college, I mean, like, I quickly realized, well, this, that fear of failing or whatever. Like, if I looked at my actual product that I was at the end, I was like, okay, this is not really very good. But I just got so addicted to the rush of creating, like the how fun and challenging it was to produce and to shoot and to put something together. Like that was just it didn't matter what came out at the end. It was just so much fun. And I was like always looking towards the next thing to get better and to better and better and better and better and better and try to learn from my mistakes. That yeah, all my fear of and then would ask anybody for help anytime, anywhere. My confidence grew massively. So I lost my fear of failure, and I definitely lost my fear of asking for people for help, and it just took off, and it has not stopped.
And I understand you calling it fear, but it almost sounds more like you knew the quality you wanted it to see. And
Yeah.
yeah, you mentioned confidence. And so I mean, in spite of maybe feeling there was an element of fear there, but you've never, I mean, you've been really brave. I really have no other word for it. I mean, really, in reverse, hearing your story, you never let anything stand in your way.
Yeah, no. I mean, I thank you. It is like a kind of bravery, I guess. I mean, I don't see it that way, but when I do share my story, people, or when I express to people that I made a movie, entire feature, or like tried to even go about that endeavor, it definitely shies people away, and or people get shied away from maybe something of that scale, or being that tenacious and just doing it again and again and again and again. It's really hard to make a feature, look at it, and say, "Wow, this stinks," and then do it again immediately after. Um, but like I don't know, like I said before, I have very I'm very addicted to the process of it, and I am like eternally hopeful that the next one is going to be some kind of step up, or is at least going to be different. Every time I start, it's like a blank slate, and so. I don't see all the red flags, but it's still fun regardless.
Well, even more so, and this is where I start to sound like a really old person, but I am probably older than your parents. But still, you had this wisdom to know to not be too precious about it, to know that like I've got to make a film to figure out how to make a better film, to figure out how to make a better film. I mean, so few people, and I mean, that works particularly right at the screenwriting level too, right? Like if you think,
Yeah.
if the people who sit down and say, I'm going to write the best screenplay ever written, they never get past the first page because it's not, but you actually have to barf out a piece of crap that you can
Yeah.
then start rewriting, right? So any idea where that knowledge came from that you were willing, in spite of your high standards, you knew you had to work your way up, if not, you mentioned a work ladder, but also just up your own personal ladder of honing these skills and honing your ability.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's stems probably still from my um the lack of confidence that I maybe had earlier, before I started making things. Like I'm immensely self-critical and um which is really hard, which is a really hard thing to be when you need to be your own kind of cheerleader. And honestly, I think my the first two films could have gone farther if I was a lot more of like really proud of them, pushing them. This is like great. I love this, instead of like just looking at them, seeing, okay, well, here are all the mistakes that I made, and here's a couple of things I did well, but here are all the mistakes. Let me go to the next one, and then try to do something differently or not make all those mistakes again. But I'm really critical because I'm really critical of film generally, and I really want to make something that's really good. And I know that I just want to try to be objective, and I'm not very friendly when it comes to watching film. And I'm very critical, and I wish that I would be able to watch one of my own films with my extremely critical eye and say, no, this is actually good. Like this is strong. This works. And I expect people in the audience to hold the same standard.
Right. You have high standards as an audience member. You have high standards as really as a cinephile or as a film lover. You
Yeah.
you and I mean many of us do, but not everyone does, right? There's some people who are just like, "Hey, I liked it." They and then you say something like, "Well, can you believe that that horrible plot hole was there?" And they go, "Oh, I didn't notice." Whereas it sounds like you're aware of that. I'm also curious about the writing for you because I consider Downtown just so well written,
Oh,
and
thank you.
I mean, honestly, the pacing, and at at the festival level, one of the things that sometimes isn't there is structure, story structure, and like I don't know if you read books or if it was a professor or if it's just from watching so many films you understood the structure of what a feature screenplay should be. But I mean, Downtown has. I mean, I admit, so I had a bit of a screenwriting background. So as a viewer, like when I'm watching, particularly features, but even shorts submitted to the festivals, man, when people hit their plot points at the right moments and stuff, I'm like, oh, bravo. Like, because there's nothing like, okay, something should have happened by now. Like, I'm enjoying the comedy and the acting, but is there going to be a story? Whereas, oh man, your story is ever evolving. There's twists and turns, and
Hmm.
there is never a moment in Downtown where your audience is thinking, well, when's something exciting going to happen? You know what I mean? Like it is, besides being a really fun ride, it's just really smart. So I'm just curious if as a screenwriter, you truly just, you started writing, like, did you write scripts when you were younger, like with the little things in high school, or it wasn't really till Cal State Long Beach and when you sit down to write a script, you're already thinking like you're writing for the final product?
Yeah. So I didn't start writing until I was, until about, yeah, college. I'd never written anything before. I started with monologues. I didn't really, I don't, I still, it's funny to say. I mean, I'm not super confident in my ability to write like a really complex story, like that movie Glasses that played, the sci-fi plot. I'm like, I could never come up with something like that. But I just started with monologues, and then I wrote some shorts, but they were mostly just small stakes character studies. And then I think I wrote my first feature screenplay, which I read recently. Is awful. It's terrible. It's horrendous. It has no understanding of like structure at all. But I learned all this structure through trial and error, just watching something just absolutely fail. A certain time after you finished it and thinking, oh my God, wow, this really drags, because you're your own worst enemy as a writer, because you've written it and you love it and it's like fulfills you, and then you look at it and you're like, God, I mean, this makes so much sense to me, and and then when you implement it and you look at it like much later, when you're like emotionally removed from it, you realize probably what everybody else realized, which is like, this is incredibly slow and doesn't really mean anything. And you're not nailing home the important, um, uh, you know, key elements of storytelling, or, you're not communicating your messages effectively. Um, I've written like 7 features, and my ability to tell stories gotten like much, much, much better. I attribute that definitely to, or for Downtown specifically, like that was a lot of people giving me good feedback. At the script level, I gave it to a friend of mine who had edited for me. I gave it to my cinematographer. I gave it to some of his friends. I gave it to another friend of mine who's in film, or 2 other friends of mine who are in film, and um, just calling them, asking them like, "What do you think?" And making sure that they were being extremely critical, because of that first draft of Downtown, they were all like, "Well, this is just nonsense. It's very funny, but this is is a meandering, just random uh, series of unconnected shorts, And so then I had to be a lot. I had to like really focus and get okay, find Honey and Timo. Their emotional story is then the crux of the film, and Honey has to be the emotional center of it and the heart. And we need to be making sure, like pacing wise, we're starting things out. And then in post, when I put it all together and it was kind of working, then I gave it to people and I made a Google form and I asked them, what do you think of the film? And, tell me where it drags. Just write a time code down where you think it drags. What a lot of pacing questions, a lot of story structure questions. Not specifically questions about like, do you understand what's going on? Because I don't really care about that. As long as you're entertained, like that's all I really give a shit about. A lot of people were like, well, what's in what's on the hard drive? Doesn't matter. None of that is important to me. Is just, are you entertained or are you bored? And so people gave me some great feedback, and then I would just chop, 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 and be ruthless with my cutting to make sure that this thing just like flew by. And another reason for that was because on my second film, when I tried to make this grand um, emotional kind of character study of this guy, this like singular main character. There are no other reoccurring characters in the films because I couldn't afford any, really. It's a huge cast. There's like 37 people in the movie, but they're all just play one single role. And so he just kind of navigates through this world. And I had such a clear idea of exactly what every single scene was supposed to mean. And he meets this person and this truth is revealed, and, blah, blah, blah. And then when I finished it was just nonsense. I mean, it was a terrible story structure, and nobody liked it at all. This is before I released it. This is just getting feedback. And then So then, so my entire, my opus of the character study arc was completely fell flat. And so my editor and I had to sit down and we just rearranged the whole movie. And we put up all the scenes on a wall and then we just completely rearranged it by based on tone and to get like a way stronger story structure. Because my first, what I was so confident was like just the most meticulous story arc was a total failure. And then so I had to, I took all the lessons I learned from that and put this into Downtown. Mostly just being like, just keep moving, keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. Never let anybody get bored. And make sure you do hit key moments. Those are really important. Like important structure moments. Audiences need that. They gotta have those things. But yeah, I hope that answers that question.
Yeah. Well, and besides, I'm gonna make a point after I say something. But the first thing I want to say is, but besides the structure in Downtown, you nailed that. And then, but also there's an emotional truth throughout it, and, especially with the characters, and especially maybe it's because I'm kind of crazy about my life partner, but I actually thought that the Timo and Honey relationship was really what raised it to another level of storytelling, because right, there's lots of, I mean, I'm sure people throw the Tarantino name at you, but you know what? There's never been a relationship in one of his films where I felt like those two people, those are real human beings in love with each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you have that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
In a crime film, that it's not a lot of people have the wisdom or really the guts to do that.
Yeah, that was a product of my first. I was so anti anything dramatic or trying to rely on, I don't know, anything dramatic to try to tell the story. And so after that first draft, which was literally just a series of gags and jokes, basically, everybody was like, "You need to find, if you're not telling a story, what's the point?" And they were all right. And so then I realized, I had to flesh out the relationship between Honey and Timo a lot more and make it, important that they get together and not, in a schlocky way. There's definitely some people that watch the film and they don't like Timo at all, and they don't think that they're a good match and that they should be together, and that they're, the fact that they end up together in the end is like unsatisfying. I mean, it's like a prism. You can see whatever you want to see in it based on, do you like, do you like these people or not? But at least the connection between the two characters, regardless of what you think of them personally, being a through line in the film was really important and was like definitely the key to this being like an enjoyable full watch instead of just literally a procession of gags.
For sure, for sure. And then the thing I wanted to bring up is listening to you made me aware of one of the reasons why I hold filmmakers, and like honestly, I'm gonna throw the word auteur at you because as a writer director, I feel like you deserve it.
It's okay.
But yeah, so sorry, you're an auteur, but
Okay.
but I know it's like, don't call me. No, exactly, you're fine with it. But here's where I get funny is what we demand of a film auteur is that they both respect the audience, but also when they feel like it, they say, fuck it, this is what's more important. And sort of like when you were talking about the scripts and working on it and stuff, and like what happened with I think the middle feature is, I mean, I always joke that that's like falling in when you write something and you keep it in just because you wrote it and like it, you're loving the smell of your own farts.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
right.
absolutely.
And when you're watching, but the interesting thing is a great auteur filmmaker knows which farts are worth sharing with the audience. You know what I mean? Like this is so me, but it also, this is going to work. You know what I mean? Like that is such a hard line to walk.
Yeah.
But I would say I would say all the films in our festival walk that line where they are very individualistic and a bit, I mean, maybe the word's eccentric because, it's not a studio film, it's an independent film. So if you're making an independent film and you don't do things that in general Hollywood wouldn't bother to make, then I don't know why you're making an indie film, by the way, because you've got to do something to stand out.
Yeah, there's no point in making something traditional and like conformist if you don't honestly have the money to do it. You can't, like, you're gonna just embarrass yourself if you're gonna try to make a Hollywood movie without Hollywood money. That's really futile.
It really is. It really is. And to obviously I find farts amusing, but but it really is like about something that truly is individualistic to you as a creative.
Yeah.
That, when to put your foot down and say, this stays. Yeah. And you also know when, like, well, that one actually, let's open the window.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would say I start like very much as this whole thing is for me, like as I'm writing it. Like I'm very rigid in my writing, in that I just want to serve myself, basically. And I think maybe as drafts go on, I maybe open up a little bit more, but I'm like, this is all just for me, because it's all just on a page, and it's just me by myself writing. Like, I just want to keep myself entertained. But as it goes on, to all the way basically to the end, the more and more and more I open up the film to the audience. And then by the time I'm in post, then I've got all the elements, which were originally all things that I really wanted. And now I need to find a way to make it the most palatable for the audience as possible, without cutting out things that, like, I mean, I had like red lines, it was just like, I'm not going to lose these scenes. I don't care if it turns people off. I don't care if it really bothers you. Like, as long as I felt like it didn't destroy the film as a whole or destroy an entire act, if it really turned somebody off purely because they don't have that kind of sense of humor, or it's too dark, fine, so be it. I'm sorry. But, like, if I felt that they were just kind of singular moments, bits, gags, small scenes, like, I mean, and I take gamble, like in Downtown specifically, like the entire character of Jerry himself is completely irrelevant to the movie. He walks out at the beginning of the motel, at the end of the motel scene, at the beginning of the movie, and then it doesn't matter ever. It never ties into Honey and Timo's story, but it didn't care because I found him so funny. And so, there's plenty of people that, probably watching is like, wow, what was the point of that stuff? But I know there's lots of people that have that sense of humor, and would find that. I know I'm not completely, so again, on the larger picture, as long as what I'm going to fight for and what's really important to me isn't like completely throwing away my whole narrative, like destroying the pacing, that kind of stuff, then I'll keep that stuff in. But overall, on a grander scheme, I really do want people to like my films. I gotta fight so hard for people to watch these things. So there's no point in like making something insufferable purely for the sake of ego, because okay, then good job. Nobody's gonna watch your film.
True. And I would attribute that to the fact that in a way I might even put words in your mouth that are a little defensive and say that it's not that as you get deeper into the film or deeper into the script or deeper into the edit, you start thinking about the audience more, but you become the audience and you start looking at it for yourself, right? Because you have high standards as an audience member. And so instead of I think you might just become the audience at that point, and you might say to yourself, well, actually, I am okay with all this horrible shit happening to Jerry. And if someone doesn't like, by the way, like, count me in the camp of like every time it's not a spoiler, right? Every time, because you mentioned it, every time, I'm like, oh man, like, but like, I find it funny. I think it's funny. Yeah. I actually, based on what you just said, I literally have to read you one of my jury members' comments, because not too many of our jury members throw in comments, but this one, she loves to throw in comments because she knows I read them, and I just want you to know. So it starts off with, okay, this is way too violent for me, way too sexually violent. And that said, ... I loved it with 3 exclamation points. The writing was hysterical. The acting was perfect. Locations were to die for. My favorite part about this movie is that it knew what it was and embraced that from start to finish. I mean, this is literally somebody who's saying like, this ain't my kind of movie, and I loved it. And by the way, it makes me so proud to have a jury member who can love a genre that like not for them.
Right, exactly. That's somebody who really understands cinema, and I deeply appreciate that. I'm sorry that it was too much in some respects, but I'm glad that you were able to see that it was good enough in in other regards.
But it's also proof that people have to have an open mind, right? Because if I had said, oh, well, this one's a little, this one has some violence in it, maybe they skip it, but I don't give anyone any warnings. Like you have to accept art for what it is. And it's proof that like by having because you have high standards, you make a film that reaches people beyond the genre, what the genre would normally earn, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, definitely. And also I want to go back to what you said about you becoming the audience more. That's so true, because when you're writing it, it's perfect in your head. I mean, it's like brilliant in your head. Every scene, every moment, everything is just, crystallized and idyllic. But, then at some point you realize it, whether it's like, in front of you on set, or you're looking at it in post, and you realize like, wow, or you should realize this stinks. This is so bad. I mean, you can actually look at it and what was in your mind that was like so perfect, and that that I was going to die for to have it in, just turns out to be bad. I mean, I guess sometimes it can be hard. You lose the objectivity, and you want to still believe in something that it isn't working, but because I'm so critical, I'm usually quick to understand what is good and what is bad, and like let it go. I don't think there's anything that I could tell myself is bad, but keep it in, for the sake of like, well, this meant a lot to me at some point.
Yeah. All right. So let me ask a question about your plan of making 3 features sort of or in a row. Did you have a framework of each film? Like, so you went one at a time because I guess I was kind of building up in my mind, but you're already shaking your head no, for those who can't see you on Zoom, that it wasn't like you had the downtown script in mind and then you wrote 2 things that would build your muscles to make it. It was more natural than that.
Yeah, it was a lot more natural. The first one, the first one was just a collection of like 28 shorts and vignettes and gags and sketches, basically. And that was literally just because, I threw that together. I had a feature script at that point, but I wanted more money to make it. And I didn't want to gamble on, I thought I really liked that script. And so I thought, well, if I make it this cheap, it's just going to kind of tarnish it. And I was also very afraid of working with an actor over the course of an entire production. I knew that our film, the first one, was going to be so scrappy and so independent, so indie, and like such a nightmare that I didn't know. I knew I had 2 friends and a couple of other people that would come and help me for a day or two, and they knew me. and they had worked with me before and they trusted me, and we were all so friends, and so like we would just be hanging out together and be fun. But to bring in somebody new who was like trying to actually take this seriously, um, what really scared me, and also I don't think I had the confidence to really tell a full story that length. So I was just like, let me make a movie that is just every single day. We get a new batch of actors that come in and we shoot with them for a couple of hours and then we say goodbye to them. And so we never have to carry them over multiple days, which also saves me money. And we'll just every day is something completely different. And so if like one day just really stinks, that doesn't have to go in the film because it's some kind of critical plot point. It's just a short that we just threw away. And then, we just kept the good ones, threw away the bad ones, and then just put it all together into like one thing that I could call a feature. And then was like, done. That's it. That's the movie. It was the most calculated, safest way. I was also very like I said, I didn't have confidence that I could tell a full, complete story. And so I thought, I want to show the audience something where they can like basically, if they don't like it for like more than 60 seconds, if they don't like how it's going right now, they can just like be like, well, I'll just wait for the next short, and then hopefully they'll change their mind. Um, so yeah, that one was like very calculated in just this is what I have right now. This would be the absolute cheapest. This would be the easiest, and this is what I'm confident in making. And then after that one, I was like, no, I gotta tell one singular story. I want an actor. I want to tell a character arc. And I want something that's like far more cohesive. And but also took place out on the streets because that's what we did with the first one was everything was out on the streets, and I wanted to do the same in the second one. And so, I mean, I can't remember exactly what the with the where that one came from, but it just came from a need to make something narrative. Like, actually, let me do it. Let me give it a try. And then the third one was, well, let me. After the second one, what I loved so much, this third one was taking everything that I did right in the second one and trying to amplify that, and ignoring everything that stunk about the second one, and uh, you know, looking at, and just going as big as possible, doing the same thing that I've always been doing, but more money, more actors, and more absurdity. I just loved going out on the street and shooting something absolutely crazy and seeing if we could get away with it. And then I mean, what it began as literally the Jerry film, which was going to be like 70 minutes of just Jerry chasing, which I realized was way too difficult. But then it was just like a list of gags that I wanted to do, and I found a way to weave those. I found a story to tell where those were included.
Right. So in a way, I don't know if it's fair to just say that Jerry's story is your B plot or whatever, but it totally does satisfy. Well, what can I say? It sort of satisfies an urge to, bad things happen to people.
Yeah.
Whether right, like it's almost a philosophy. Like
Yeah.
it's interesting. The philosophy of downtown, but like downtown as a story really is about what happens in life when the unexpected happens,
Mhm.
and how your reactions to that determine your fate.
Yeah, I really, really, really liked um I really like Coen Brothers movies, and I love that their movies don't add up all the time, and that they intentionally are they're satisfied with a film not totally making sense, or the characters being wrong, but the audience being wrong as well. And so like I just liked the idea that Jerry existed because he's really funny. And I knew we were going to do some great gags and some great chases, but you know, everybody was just wrong. Everybody was wrong in the film. everybody was wrong about where the briefcase was and what was in it and who had it, and and I found that kind of funny. It's kind of like a nihilistic gag, I guess, but I found it funny. But then also, um, to your point, yeah, everybody made it for themselves in this film. The whole movie is about what can how far can your own actions take you when presented with a problem? Because if Honey or Timo were not smart enough, savvy enough, driven enough, I mean, they would have failed really quickly.
And
But
in love enough.
yeah, and in love enough, yeah,
Because really they would neither of them would have made it on their own, I don't think.
yeah, definitely not. Um, yeah, I mean, that's the what like propels them through it. I mean, they could have very easily just gone in completely different ways and never talked again. But one, I don't think that would be very interesting. But then also, at a certain point in the film, they're doing it for each other, and that's like bigger and stronger than doing it alone.
By the way, I have to throw in to what you said about Coen Brothers. I'm a huge Coen Brothers fan, and I've been to a few screenings where they did a Q&A, and
Oh, great.
I want to share this with you, which is I on two occasions I've heard them refer to themselves as comedy writers.
Okay, nice.
They consider no matter what the cinephile world thinks of them as amazing dramatic auteurs or whatever,
Mhm.
they sit down and they were talking about, and actually it was about Fargo, and they were saying like, no, I mean sometimes we just, what is the funniest idea? Like we consider ourselves comedy writers first.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and they totally are. And um, I, I mean, I think like the undertone of comedy in their film is like the humanity that then makes their film so much more impactful and strong instead of something that's just completely straightforward, dry, humorless. Like, I mean, the characters in Fargo, the reason why we love them so much is because have like they have comedic sensibility and they're kind of dopey but that's funny to us, but then it also makes us really want to we love them so much more, and so we're rooting for them so much harder. Um, you know, um, so yeah, I mean, yeah, they're definitely comedy writers.
Definitely comedy writers, and as you've said many times, you see yourself working comedically for in general, like even if you were making, an action thriller, sci-fi, there will be some humorous moments for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I can't help it. I think I just it's fun for me. And I think it's also something that I can do that I recognize not a lot of other people can do. And I don't want to say like, oh, it's something I can do and better than other people, but um, people say comedy's hard, and it's not for me at all. But it's hard for other people, and it's good because there's less people doing it, or that they're not doing it super well. But it comes to me fairly easily, and so finding people who are really funny, writing something that's really funny, executing a joke through editing is something that comes easily. So I know it's a strong suit of mine, and I definitely want to keep utilizing it.
Well, and well, how did you cast the film? Was it all auditions? Did you know some of the actors in advance?
Some of them I had worked with before. Um, the guy who opens the film, the old man who sees Honey and then has a heart attack, he's the first actor I ever cast in my life when I was like 19 or 20 or something. And he's the only one that's been in all three of my films. And there was a couple of people that I had worked with prior that I thought were really strong that I wanted to work with again. And there was a couple of people I just pulled off the street, as I thought I liked their look a lot, and I thought they were cool. They did something that was unique and different. I knew I couldn't get an actor to do. And then But the rest of it was all casting. Yeah, it was all actors access and backstage and doing like extensive audition process that took like months to narrow it down to find all those people.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, I was just going to add to what you were saying about comedy that really you cast it perfectly
Thank
because
you.
because clearly, I mean, everyone knows the John Huston quote, but I mean, obviously, the way you casted all those roles got you halfway to the finish line as far as the tone you needed.
Yeah, definitely. That was really important, was finding people that could be funny and that were um that were just going to bring my that was going to bring my script to life because and I've got a good eye and I worked really hard. I spent a lot. I mean, I watch every single person that submits. I watch their reel, everyone. And they usually have 12, 15 plus people audition for every single role. And I look at people who've got crazy headshots, and even if they don't have a reel, I'll invite them to audition because I like their headshot so much. But they gotta have something that zhuzh, and and so because I also want them to bring something personal to it. Because if they're just gonna be very strict in like what I've written, it's usually going to be kind of flat and boring. And they're going to, each one of those actors that I was going to cast, other than my leads, we're going to be working with my leads who are very improv forward. I hired my leads specifically for that, was to make sure that they were like really strong in improv, because improv is the best thing for a fast pace. And so I needed to make sure that all the people that I had hired as supporting were also really strong with improv. And we're not going to feel uncomfortable or behind the ball when they were going to be thrown into that situation. And some of those people were only good at improv. They couldn't read. There were plenty of people that were not very good at reading lines. And I'll say that's only because it was probably the first time they had ever acted before. But they were quick, they were smart, they were usually just kind of playing themselves, and they were paired with my one of my leads who was also very strong at improv as well. And everybody had to be quick. Everybody had to be quick and be smart because that was the style of humor for the film.
For sure. Well, I find it hard. I mean, look, I understand. Look, I've seen John Goodman do an interview about the Coen brothers where he says, yeah, there are no rewrites. You do what's on the page, but not, it sounds like you're very, very not precious about what's on the page. And that's why it comes to life on screen.
Yeah, I think so. I always think that it's my role until I give it to the actor, and then it's theirs, and then they're informing me, because they're gonna be the person, and I want, you just have to write so intricately and write so much if you want just a ton of dialogue just being spewed out. And yeah, I'm just not that good at that. I'd say I rather would just hand it to an actor and at least just tell them this is what you have to communicate. This is the tone, and then just like go. And also, is collaborative as well, I guess, because you're really relying on the strengths of somebody else to just take your script and run with it and bring their own talent and style to your story and your character. But yeah, I mean, I'm not precious at all. I just want what works, period. And if what I've written works, great. If not, then whatever. We'll just start over from scratch completely.
Excellent. All right, I want to jump back to something you said. a long time ago, but I picked up on it and I was waiting. And I don't know if it was Downtown or one of the previous films, but you did mention like working weekends.
Hmm.
Is that how you did Downtown?
Yeah, we shot Friday, Saturday, Sunday for about I think maybe 7 or 8 consecutive weeks. We did a couple of pickup shots on, maybe like a Wednesday night. Everybody has a full-time job, that was involved in this project, and so um, you know, we were that was the only way that we could have done this, because people can't quit their jobs. They also, I mean, like I was paying everybody, but not enough where that would be their full-time income for like 2 months, or for a month or whatever. Like, um, yeah, that was the only way that we could really do it. And that was something I figured out on the first one and then became the style, basically.
I mean, talk about my pom poms again. For over 30 years, I mean, Jesus, I've been around a while. So going way back, and actually, I'll name a film that I saw in the '90s around the Clerks era called Bible and Gun Club that someone shot on weekends. And every time well, obviously this is self-selecting because I'm talking about Q&As and stuff, but every time there's a Q&A with a feature where they shot on weekends and then took those days off in between,
Hmm.
they come out better. It's just better. Like if Hollywood could take 5 days off
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then spend $70 million per weekend, but give that filmmaker, I'm going to cough, a full week to think about what happened last weekend and think about how to make the next weekend better. I just think it's a better way to create.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great, it's a great way to work, I mean, sometimes you get in a mode and you don't want to stop it, like, I mean, things are going really well, but, and you want to just like keep going for a couple more days because you don't want to get out of that. But I mean, those days in between are great. I mean, I get to watch all my footage. I get to discuss it with my DP. I get to sit down, figure out what I want to reshoot, what I want to change in shooting. I can, I mean, because I'm producing this thing on my own, I can, I'm gonna have to run all the errands, and do all the prep. I mean, you just get to chill out for a little bit. I mean, there's still a million things to do on those days in between. I was also working my job. Um, but like, you know, every weekend was like such a, you'd go in and then it was just like 72 hours of just insanity, basically. And then, I just couldn't imagine keeping going doing that. It was good to stop, to relax, to evaluate exactly what it was we were doing and make informed decisions about how we needed to go into the next weekend. And then I would have time to implement those decisions, get new locations, write something new.
Yeah, so
Um,
you also did some rewriting as you saw how characters were coming together, how you got to see performances, so you even got to write for those actors even a little more specifically.
yeah, definitely. The ending when they're driving off in the car together, that was a written scene until I started working with the two of them, and I realized that what I had written was not. I knew that they were just going to be a million times better than what I'd written, so I, I think I wrote a couple of like key lines and then gave it to them and was like, you're just gonna go off. You're gonna do your like fun montage stuff. And then all you need to make sure is you drop a couple of these key lines, but everything else I want you to come up with on your own. And we would rehearse that a little bit and we figure out the structure and the flow to it based on their improv, which was great. But I mean, that was something because I had the time to rewrite, in between after I had worked with both of them was like, I know that they can bring me something like way stronger than what's in the script right now.
For sure. And this process you used, I mean, you can always you always know what you once you've finished a job, then you know how you really should have done it. And by
Yeah. Oh,
spreading out the
no.
film and by spreading out a film this way, you kind of do get to, okay, each weekend you get better at what you're doing. I mean,
Mhm.
it's even, I mean, I joke over the weekend, the teenager and she and I did some household projects, and I always joke with her. I'm like, now when we finish making this lattice, we'll know how we should have done it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was every weekend. That was my DP and I would drive home because I was living in Long Beach and he was living in um, like in Orange County. And so at the end of every weekend, and he would stay with me for the whole weekend. And at the end of every weekend, we would drive home and maybe we'd get something to eat and we'd probably have like a beer and we'd evaluate the entirety of the weekend. How did it go from start to finish? And usually there was like a million things that we could complain about or, that we had fought about or whatever. But it was like a great recap of like, well, how did this little chunk of our shoot go? What was right? What was wrong? We're going to do this next weekend. We need to do that differently now. We need to tackle it differently, or we need to have a different mindset. That was always like, it was like the post game conversation after every week. Yeah, I think if we just did it 5 days a week and then went into a weekend, the weekend would just be pure physical recovery and then thrown back into it again. So it was good to have like short stints that we could then really analyze and then spend some time recovering and implementing our changes. It was, yeah, it was a really smart way to go about it.
It's a great way, and again, like just like a long time way near the beginning of this, I jokingly teased our festival's jury about not giving acting cast award. Like, I love that we have a full cast award, but they tend to lean towards drama. I mean, please let your friend know that like the cinematography in downtown is fucking amazing. It's so good. It looks so good. But I'm looking at our list and like, yeah, of course, the cinematography award goes to the one that had like was shot on the Spanish coast of the Mediterranean, and it's like
Yeah, yeah, I
there's
get it.
underwater shots and this and that, and it's like I get it. I get why people have so much respect for that. But you know what? It's actually harder to make a motel room cinematic. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. My DP, Tyler, who's also a producer partnering in this with me, Tyler Carlin, like, first of all, one man crew for the whole shoot, did everything himself, operated, gaffed, gripped, AC by himself. I mean,
So your camera department was one person.
it was one guy for the whole shoot, which was insane. And he did an amazing job. But yeah, he had to take on a lot of really unconventional things like shooting in like a really drab motel and trying to make that visually interesting for upwards of 10 minutes straight. That's really, really hard to do. And he did it really, really well. And that was because, he's a great operator, first of all, but also just having like a very aggressive and creative shot list, and like vision of how and like to keep it moving constantly throughout the course of that like long scene, but then also like shooting in these like locations. I mean, we're in the boondocks of downtown Los Angeles. It's really hard, and he was on his own operating, and like it's hard to make that kind of captivating and interesting, when you're not working with very much. But he's a great operator. He's got a great eye, and he's always just reacting in time. That's his strongest suit. Is always just reacting in time to the changing conditions, and never being quite satisfied. with exactly how things are going, wanting to push it farther, which is great. I always appreciate that from him.
Yeah, and I'm sure he benefited from the same thing you and the whole film did, which was he could he obviously you were sharing he was able to watch the footage during the week of what was shot on the weekend, and he could think, oh, if I had X light, or if I did, if I he was able to improve upon his work. And so, right, because if you'd shot 3 weeks in a row and 6 days on, 1 day off, and shot in 18 days and then walked into the editing suite, no one has a chance to recover. No one has a chance to make adjustments. You
Yeah.
can make adjustments, but not like you were able to. So I assume one of the reasons why it looks so stellar is that he also had that time.
Yeah, definitely. He would always analyze his footage, and he would come to me and say, like, this is what I think is the most effective, like he and then we'd also look at what we thought was not very effective, like, hey, just getting this traditional coverage is just kind of like lame, and it's not, but when we do these extreme close-ups, or we're tracking with the camera, like, that's look at how effective that is. And so he would always point out shots and point to them and say, like, this is cinema, this is what our strong suit is, we need to be doing more of this specifically. And so we'd retailer our shot list. And also, I mean, we would very meticulously shot list everything, but I mean, we would never were able to follow them ever, because we didn't have enough money for things to ever go according to plan. We'd go there and the location would be different, or we just wouldn't have enough time, or we just didn't have the equipment or whatever. And so we would be able to recall what we pointed at, saying, this is what is working, And so when we were on the fly making something up, he would remember, well, this is the strongest footage I've gotten so far, or what the strongest footage he had gotten so far was, and try to replicate that and stay in that style.
Right, exactly. Because yeah, amusingly, not amusingly, the whole film just holds together. Like there would be no way for a viewer. It would never occur to me as someone who I think I have a fairly discerning eye at this stage, and and I can sure as fuck tell you there's no scene I look at and go, oh well, that was the way that was shot. I bet that one was early, and then you know what I mean, like. The
Yeah.
whole thing ties together. If you had told me the whole film was shot in 4 days, I would almost believe you. Like if it was just like a drug fueled, like no one slept for 4 days kind of thing, I'd almost believe that because it feels that way. Everything just feels together and all of the same organism, really.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's hard. That's like a really hard to do as a DP, to like make sure that the way that you're shooting on day one is the same as when you're shooting 8 weeks later. And some of that film we was picked up a year later. And so, he had to go back into the footage and be like, God, how did I do this again? And um so he had to, like, be very systematic in the way that he, I guess, just remembered to shoot things a certain way, or like is like the doctrine for how we're shooting this. We're shooting it on these lenses, we're shooting it in this style, at this color palette, and whatever. Coloring also, I mean, really, really helped tie everything together. We had a great colorist, and he and my DP oversaw that process, the coloring process, and made sure that everything tied together. And we really did some miracles in making, like, shots that were shot a year apart, like, seamless between the two.
And it's a very colorful film. It's very
Yeah, it is.
vibrant.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah, that was, like, always really important, because downtown LA is, like, very colorful and vibrant, or at least LA in general. That was the kind of, like, LA I wanted to portray. Was I mean, some of those locations are pretty, like, sad and run down, but there's still color all over Los Angeles. And it's also a huge challenge for actors to like keep their character up, to not lose that thing. And also, there's like the almost like negative, it's like the virtue that works against you, which is they're going to get better and better and better as they do it. But then, you might have a problem where they're like, oh my God, they're like a million. It's like they're like playing who they should be playing like in the third act. In the first act, they're not, so that was just making sure that they were my actors knew exactly who they were playing, and they had gotten to the place that we were all satisfied from day one. And then also, learning along the way, and it didn't really like completely change their character, or the way that they approach the character or their performance necessarily, but it definitely, I think we all learned, as we'd have a conversation at the end of the weekend, okay, well, what was working? And it was mostly just in the way that we would work with each other, like, was I getting in your head too much? Did you not prepare enough for this? Or, were you feeling a little bit uncomfortable with, whatever direction, and just getting better and better and better at getting into character and getting out of character and taking notes and changing and improvising on the fly and being comfortable also with what we were doing. I mean, I would they'd just get in costume and then they would go stand on a street corner and act. And we would have a long lens from afar away, and, they'd have to play their character around in real life, around people, and navigate that. And that's really hard. I mean, you have to be so comfortable in order to act, to take on a role, and to feel confident in who you're playing. And normally actors can achieve that by like, meditating in a trailer and then stepping onto like a protected studio lot. Like here, they were preparing in the back of their cars, and then we're stepping onto the street and doing this character, and so they got infinitely more comfortable with doing that, as the shoot went on. And I think that started because in the first weekend, which was a total nightmare clusterfuck, but we did the motel scene at the beginning the first weekend, but that was like really just like a 4-day boot camp basically of how they were going to approach this character. Like from day one to the end of day 4, they had a very strong understanding of who they were and what they were playing, and then they just got more and more and more and more comfortable in that role as time went on.
Well, going back to stuff you said a while back, but in the last sequence that we discussed, I want to add another compliment, which is I'm a third generation Angelino, and I love
great.
LA. I actually have affection for the city of Los Angeles,
Good,
and
good,
LA's
good.
downtown gets shit on a lot, and not a lot of people respect it.
It's insane to me. I met some guy a week or two ago who's been living on the west side for like 5 or 6 years. He said he's never been to downtown LA one time, which is just like insane to me how you wouldn't have like even passed through that part of town. LA is like extremely isolated, if you live in the valley, you don't leave the valley unless you like work outside of the valley. But like I love downtown LA. I've been living in downtown LA for a while now, and like it is totally wild. It's completely bonkers. Like I think John Mulaney compared it to New York in the '70s, which totally makes sense. But I was just a place where like I stepped out of it, and I was like, well, there's just something happening on the street everywhere here, and I just was drawn to that.
And the compliment I wanted to pay was that you make downtown LA, it's a character in the film.
Yeah, big time, definitely.
And I don't know if those goofballs at the major studios have ever really made a film. I mean, you'd have to go back to when I was in college and To Live and Die in LA came out.
Yeah,
but LA is not a character in that film.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a few palm trees, but you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah. I mean, it really, that's a film that does utilize LA in like in like fully. Like it really looks at all the nooks and crannies of Los Angeles.
It
And
does, but it doesn't pull at my heart for my love for LA,
Mhm.
and
Okay.
my love for
Yeah.
downtown. And honestly, well, I don't know, I think we might have chatted about it at one of the festival party or something, but my wife works downtown.
Okay.
And when I was first courting her, we would go out to lunch quite a bit downtown, and I'm pretty sure her office building is not far from a few of your locations because we were watching the film. And by the way, is another compliment I can give you. It's like I hit pause probably about 5 minutes into downtown,
Mhm.
and then I grabbed her ass when she was available and said, "We're watching this one together." Because
Oh, great.
I knew within the first couple minutes that this was one. Like I just want her to watch all the best films with me because for some reason she doesn't come to the festival. Because she only sees them at home. She actually never attends.
Right.
She's actually an introvert,
Okay.
so she's allowed to stay home and let me be the goofball extrovert, I guess, at the festival. But anyway, I pulled her in and we kept going. And so but anyway, so I'm familiar with some of the area around there because her building is just west of the 110,
Okay.
right there
Okay.
in downtown. Like her office window faces the Bonaventure across the 110.
Okay. Nice.
So anyway, actually, I really I don't allow myself to hold a phone while I'm watching screeners, but
Mhm.
I think there were times we'd pause and then like, okay, where is this motel? And because you'd see the
Oh,
motel
yeah.
name and I'd want to look up, or sometimes like we'd even see a street sign and be like, see, I knew it was there. And like,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
and I just think like that added element of realism just makes it that much more tangible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was when I went to downtown LA when I started scouting there, and before I really even knew what I was looking for, and I was just exploring that area. I mean, I went there and I was like, I want everybody to see this place, because nobody would believe me if I told them what is going on around here, or like what this like looks like. And so,
Yeah, and
I
most of those stinking West Siders, when they do go downtown, it's just to go to like some nightclub at the top of a building, like at the top of a
yeah, right.
hotel. They're never down. They're not experiencing downtown LA.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, and downtown is so diverse. You have like the Pinata district, you have the toy district, you have the
Fashion
garment
district.
district, the
Yeah,
fashion
garment. Yeah.
district. Yeah, and then there's the entire, you have then the new up and coming kind of East Side, the Arts District, and then the like very industrial factory areas of like the southeast side as it like gets close to Vernon. And so I really wanted to show, I just wanted to show all of that because like I was so intoxicated with like all the different places and everything that was going on to the point where it was like, I mean, I was making my crew shoot in so many different places and our montage sequences were so long. And I mean, they had to be cut down, for the sake of pacing. But like, I was very, it was really important to me that I showed everybody just everything. I wanted everyone to get a very clear picture of what the downtown LA looks like.
Well, you did, and for those who do know and appreciate, and maybe even love downtown LA, yeah, it's a bit of a love letter, and it's.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I probably saw your film for the first time in probably September, October, I would imagine. And so for months, I've been wanting to use that line on you that like downtown LA is a character in the film. It's
Yeah,
just a
yeah.
part of it. It's just a part of it.
That means a lot because we worked really hard to make sure that that was integral to the story.
Excellent. Well, I don't. I know you. We didn't. We were your LA premiere. We were almost your world premiere, probably
Yeah.
because the version. Because oh, that's right. I saw the
You
version with
saw
temp
a work in
sound.
progress. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, yeah, it was picture was locked.
Yes,
And I bet
right.
your color timing was done because that it looked so good.
Yes, yeah, that's true. But like, I mean, I sent it out because I didn't want to miss out on this festival. It was local. It had been going for quite some time, and I had seen um, like lineups in the past that looked like really strong films, and so I sent it out, and people are extremely judgmental. If it's not perfect technically, like within the first couple minutes, like psh, you're out of there. But I'm really appreciate that you saw the quality. Our sound wasn't good, but sound is like so paramount. Sound is like, I mean, really what makes or breaks a film feeling real at all. And our sound wasn't done at all. But you and your team were able to see that this was like, strong enough story wise to be allowed in the festival. And then it was done when we premiered.
It was fully done. I remember sending you an email that said, if this is going to be done, this is going to be in Sherman. Like there was, it's funny because I normally might wait a little bit to see what other jury members thought. And I was like, nah, everyone's going to give this I mean, I don't give many tens. I gave you a 10.
Oh, thank
And I know when I do that, like everyone else is going to love it too. But so we can't talk about where people can see it yet because you're obviously probably going to do a certain
you.
amount of time on the festival circuit.
Yeah, definitely. That's really important for me. Building a bit of an audience and, making sure we're trying to do as many local festivals as possible so my actors and crew can come out and meet people and introduce themselves. There are a lot of extremely talented people involved in the making of this, and I want them to be recognized. I mean, I'd love to play maybe in the south of France, but I'm not going to get over there, and neither are my actors. And so playing locally is really important so that they can see their work up on the big screen and meet some people.
For sure. Well, I don't know how to say this with my 30 years of jadedness being associated with or tangential to Hollywood, but man, I really fucking hope you get a nice release. I really hope because, you were one of the diligent filmmakers who came to the Sherman Oaks Film Festival panel about indie distribution.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I shouldn't say this, but like if your film doesn't get good distribution, then they really are just so dumb. Like I mean, the powers that be. I mean, I've seen films that were unique and cool and deserved a shot, but I would understand someone holding back, like at a distributor going, well, that's really good, but it's too artsy or too esoteric. Or what about that dance sequence? Like, I kind of love dance sequence in films, but anyway, I love avant-garde. But anyway, there's nothing any of those assholes could say about downtown that I wouldn't be able to, whatever, debate the shit out of. Because
Great, me too.
like I said, like I read to you, a person who's a cinephile and a filmmaker and a jury member and is anti-violence. By the way, I didn't read you the last comment in her comment. I should have. I'll add. She is. I mean, I consider myself a pretty strong feminist, but she added one more thing I wanted to read to you, which was. Normally, I hate movies like this because it's all sexy women being sexy. But this did everything so equally and how had well-rounded female characters in all caps. Shocking.
That's great. That is really important for me to hear because I mean the women in my film are sexy. That's a fact. But I really wanted them to. They're more than eye candy, and this movie is kind of my farce of action films. I'm not a huge fan of that genre, and but I still wanted well-rounded characters for the men and for the women.
Yeah, yeah. And I brought I brought her. By the way, thank you, Sassy, for always being. Her name is Sassy. I don't know. Am I allowed? I'm allowed to mention that. She's one of our best jury members.
Mm.
But if you can make her happy and me happy, and you know what I mean, like it has a breadth,
yeah,
right? It has wide appeal, is I guess what I'm trying to say, while also being art. Go figure. That's a really hard line to walk, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, website, social media, things that people should follow, and I mean, holy crap, man! People should see it. If it's playing local festivals, people should follow your Instagram or whatever and make sure to catch it.
Yeah, definitely. You can follow us at Downtown Movie on Instagram. It's all lowercase, no space or no underlines or whatever, and that's where we announce where we're playing. So, you know, if it's going to be in LA or maybe come into a city near you, come out and see it. And that's also down the line where we'll be announcing where we'll be distributing and when we'll be distributing. So then you can catch it online as well.
Excellent. All right. Well, I will get us out of here by doing my closing spiel of sorts. Cool. And where do I start? All right. Well, first, thank you, Gavin. This is really fun. And as I mentioned earlier, this actually, you know, I don't know if I said our Sherman Oaks Film Festival last December was the first time I didn't do every Q&A.
Right. Yeah, you said that.
I finally had to accept. I had to let go, which is not easy.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
So when you signed up to do this podcast kind of early in your festival run, I was like, oh, good. I was actually really, believe it or not, I'm just thanking you for letting me get a makeup on that because yeah, I really want to just push the lovely Jennifer out of the way and do your Q&A too. But I got to respect my coworkers. Come on. So anyway.
She did a great job.
I'm glad she did great. That's excellent. So thank you everyone for listening right now. This is the Discover Indie Film Podcast. Like and subscribe if you got the time, and be kind, maybe even write reviews. If you want to learn more about this podcast or a TV series that was born out of it, just go to discoverindiefilm.com. On social media, it's always at DIFwins. We mentioned the Sherman Oaks Film Festival a few times. We hold that every December. You can learn more if you go to ShermanOaksFF.com, and it's at ShermanOaksFF on social media. It's Sister Festival that we hold every June. Really, the only difference is the name. We were starting when we were launching 10 years ago. By the way, this is our 10th anniversary, our year.
Wow.
So, Film Invasion Los Angeles this June. Learn more at filminvasionla.com, and it's at Film Invasion LA on social media. We've got to have a 10th anniversary gala that compares to that gala we had in December.
Yeah. I mean, that was awesome. That was an amazing event. So if you have another one, I'll be there.
You know, we invite alumni to everything. By the way, as alumni, you'll be invited to be on the filmmakers board too. That gets to choose some awards for the shorts.
Great.
And when people ask why just the shorts, I'm like, because I can't ask everyone to watch features. Come on, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
All right, so that was Sherman Oaks Film Festival, Film Invasion Los Angeles. If you love indie film, you might want to check out a website called indiechannel.tv. And I think that's all I got to mention. So, Gavin Gaitan, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
And thank you, everyone, for listening.